Stochastic fiction game. This is a timed writing game today. This writing game will last 90 minutes as I press this button here. And within that 90 minutes, I'm going to execute this script to generate a stochastic fiction outline. That stochastic fiction outline is and will have story elements within it. And we're going to look at those story elements. And within the 90 minutes, I will write a story with these story elements and read it and rate it at the end. And for today's stochastic fiction game story elements, they are setting time, future, setting main, location, boat, conflict, person versus person, quantity of primary characters, many, point of view, first, tense, past tense, genre, dystopian, format, your format. Well, I love a good flash fiction. I don't really need to think of another dystopian novel in my life, and I'd like to be in and out of this story pretty quickly. And what I mean by that is, well, I write a lot of dystopian, and some of those are novels. So let's not do the format of first chapter, middle chapter, last chapter, which are the other formats for this. And then, of course, the fourth one is flash fiction. Let's see if I can complete this story within 90 minutes, beginning to end, with all the conflict you need, resolution. We'll go flash fiction. And dystopian, past tense, so that's, I'm usually a present tense writer by default. And I got to think of this character, this narrative. So one person's getting fought by another on a boat. Whoa there. That's at least going to limit it. I'm already coming to thoughts of having like international waters or... Excuse me. A little bit of a yawn there. Conflict in international waters. But it's just if you can have only... You have many primary characters. Whoa. It could be in a boat. They have to be in a boat. That's the main location. I got another yawn. One moment. Excuse me. Well, hey, gotta talk my way to consciousness. In the future, too. So I'm trying to, I thought about castaways. And if it's just one boat, maybe it's two boats, and they're in international water, and there's some conflict. The dystopian will end into that and sort of helps these thoughts of it. I can just take today's joy of poor people hating each other and fighting a rich people war. So we can have some workers maybe of different corporates fighting each other over who controls a section of water. We can call it the Gulf of America, the newly, and maybe Mexico, because there's lots of poor people there that we can fight against with our poor people. I'm being one of them. So I'm not the top 1% who's controlling us. Because that's where we got to go with this story, is dystopian. Oligarchs. Cyber, like some megacorps. And it's got to be on a boat, though. In the future. Just say 10 years. What's going to happen in 10 years? We may not have the reality we got right now because we all convinced ourselves, and we are slowly convincing ourselves, that history is meaningless and able to erase it as well. Much like this idea of labeling a thing, a body of water, we humans want to control. Many primary characters on a boat, so it's going to have to be a big boat or two boats, and those boats are meeting... Let's make them workers. It's definitely maybe I don't know what type of fishing happens in the Gulf of Mexico. Not sure. Excuse me again. Man, forever capture a yawn. I don't think there's enough data that exists that could purely define the feeling of a yawn to some machine. And that's not of the story. This is about people on a boat fighting each other to... Oil's coming to mind. Oil's like the big heavy, but I want to get away from that. I want to... Something that, I guess destroys the natural resources enough, and we're doing harvesting of large bodies of fish, and maybe they're using... Maybe... There's a little dystopia. They're purposely growing algae for fuel. And they got two boats that are two companies owned by different corporations based in the United States of America and Mexico. And the poor people are just a proxy to be able to fight against each other, because that's what we got to do, right? We should kill the other poor people for those rich people that control our media. It'll make the people that are perceived to be loyal maybe make $1 more an hour. They'll be able to maybe afford food. Just hate this other person, and that's going to happen. They're taking your job. No, they're not. Person versus person. Quantity of primary characters, many. Point of view first. Let's do the algae, because that's just like that reeks of... Doesn't reek, I guess, but I suppose it shows a progression, maybe like these algae blooms. And instead of trying to prevent the algae blooms, it's going to consume the waters. And I don't know if algae blooms, I think, work well in salt water. Like, I don't want to look that up. I should though. It's a simple thing. That way I can at least, I think that's what it's just going to be. Because I think the algae blooms in the ocean. Search and return engine in the ocean. Yeah. Let's do that. Yeah. Ocean algae blooms. What's the color of that? What is the color? Color. Like red algae? Yes. Oh, I love it. They're going to use algae blooms for fuel. And this is going to be fight over the algae blooms. And I could use I don't know, the fact that it's got two different names by two different countries. And I guess the one with the most poor people equipped with the best killing machines will be able to go and kill the other poor people if they get upset about the name change. Dystopia. We're in dystopia world right now, so let's get there. Oh boy. Algae blooms. I wrote... Wow, that's right. In fact, it's one of the first stochastic fiction things I posted. Algae blooms in... Yeah, it was about someone who used algae blooms in this sort of exact same way, but now I'm just going to... Wow, I've done this already. It was just a stochastic fiction story, and it's even on YouTube right now, if I'm not mistaken, one of the first. Algae blooms in boundary waters. That's what I called it. Yeah, it was a story about someone who used algae and grew it in the waters and then used it for fuel. I think it was supposed to be a novel or something, and really terrible. Well, the idea was great. Maybe the execution was okay, but it's terrible because I don't think I got far in the story. And I think it was one that I feel like wasn't complete. But it could have been like chapter first novel, so that'll never be complete until you finish the manuscript and make it a novel. But let's not talk about that. Let's get back to these algae blooms right here. Algae blooms in the Gulf of the Gulf of algae blooms. I like that. The Gulf of I've never, not say never, I rarely, for a stochastic fiction game story, have a title, especially if it's a flash fiction story. Because usually you want to wait for the flash fiction story to be written, so then you can maybe use the title to help you have a plot, or set up the entire scene, so you can do the where, and the what, why, when with the title. Most submissions don't include the title, so if your title's like 20 words long and tells a story, then you get 20 extra words. And because they're a title, they hold greater meaning than whatever follows. It's like you get twice the amount of words. So if your title's 10 words long, it could be worth potentially 30 words in total meaning and scope. Anyway, this is going to be called a flash fiction story called The Gulf of Algae. Yeah. The red algae blooms. Blooms in the Gulf. Shaped in the Gulf of Mexico, America. I'm just doing chronological order, that's all. Gulf of Mexico, America, and that way we can show the division. So we can we'll be able to show the poor people fighting each other. The red algae, but this is dystopia, remember. Come on, if you don't have a top 1% with superpowers, then you don't have a dystopian story. Or at least with all the money, which is a superpower. All the control, the sway of the information. And it's in the future. Person versus person boat. Oh man, I gotta, ooh, wow. I gotta, thank goodness I looked at that. I gotta go past tense, as well as, now I need to find the voice. So I gotta be the American, because there's no way I will be able to be a poor person from Mexico as much as I can fictionalize a poor person from America. And I've done enough fishing that at least I've got some experience, especially I have fished on a boat. I've never, and paddled canoes and stuff like that. So I've been in water. I've never guided a boat in the actual ocean. So, but I've been on a boat on the ocean. So I can use that to help fictionalize me as the American, first person, out the Gulf of Algae blooms, and I'm the poor person in America working to gather the algae. And so I'm going to be calling it Gulf of America, Mexico. Now, the Gulf of Algae. They're going to call it the Gulf of America. This is first person. If it was third person past tense, then maybe you'd want to show the division that way. But this is, now I got to get into the mind of this character, this algae collector. They're going to use it for fuel. And I got a decent amount of time. I haven't hit the 15-minute mark on my timer, so hey, I'm doing something. And I have words and a title. I'm done. I can walk away. And I got to learn how to spell algae. Evidently, I can just type it 2 different ways and think it's correct. As I stare out. The A before the E really just bugs me, but it seems that's the search and return engine's preference, so I should be doing it that way. The red algae blooms in the Gulf of America. Oh, there are. Those are. Those are. That's our red. That's our red algae bloom. What would they call them? What's their? I gotta make up a racist term. I don't want to use one that already exists. Um, this is the future. Let's at least give their racism and the poor people's battle against the poor people some digs. Wow, that's hard because they're both, you can't knock them for being call them like a scum skimmer. Ooh, yeah, you can. A scum skimmer. That's like what one would call, and I've been called it before, um, a scab. I've been called a scab before, which was a non-unionized worker. If I'm not, I gotta look that up because I just want to make sure my scum skimmer. Maybe they'll call them scabs. Uh, Scab slang for workers. Okay, right. Yep, that's why. So it was young when I was called a scab. It's because I helped my dad replace a roof on someone's house that we knew because he was a roofer. It wasn't part of a union, but there was a construction driver that drove by while I was helping, and I was young. Wow, like I want to say 10 years old, maybe around that age, 12, maybe 11, and collecting shingles and putting them in the back of a the bed of a truck, pickup truck, and down the street, someone was driving and they had construction equipment in the back of the truck and they yelled out the window, "Scabs!" and drove off. And there was person's son, the person who owned the house, their son was helping us pick up the shingles off the ground. Because my dad, had to kick them off the roof with a shovel and then lay down the tarp and then lay down the roof. And he did all that when he wasn't unionized. He had a full-time job otherwise. It was a part-time thing to do. Money. So I've been called a scab. And so I'm not going to call these scabs. I'm going to call them scum skimmers, maybe. Unlicensed scum skimmers, maybe scum skimming scabs. Scum skimming scabs in the Gulf of America. We should probably just drop the Gulf of America, put it in the first. The red algae blooms, the Gulf of America. Our Reggie Brown in our Gulf of America. Yeah, weird slang, especially when you're like 10 and you're just helping your dad out. It's funny, and the fact that it's that deep of a memory. I'm glad it happened. I get it, but hey, families need to eat too. Not that we were ever had a fear of hunger. Never. So I gotta say that. For my upbringing, at least. We did not have a lot of money, but we had enough money to not have to worry about food or being clothed or a house over one's head. Most people didn't. I mean, you can actually try to get by. Unlike this day and age, where we got in the future, we're going to have the poor people fighting each other in the Gulf of America about scum skimmers, scum skimming bags, scum skimming gags. Let's do boom. I just drop the scum skimming scabs, thieves. Taking our algae for their fuel. Zoomed around. Wait. I got past tense, right? That's that is. So I got to do past tense, right? Yes, that is right. Past tense. Dystopian, past tense, first person. Trying to find that. I think I at least found the character. The primary characters are many. Well, we'll see. It's first person. There's going to be a lot of people around. We'll introduce some. I got paragraphs and I got time, and let's just make sure person versus, this is definitely, I mean, this is person versus side, blah, blah, blah. Person versus person, what it comes down to. They're both going to be on boats. This will be in the future, because right now the Gulf of whatever doesn't have algae blooms. And they haven't been propagandized, these algae blooms, as good, because we could maybe turn it into fuel. I don't know if you can. I'm not going to look it up. In my future science world, that you can. Algae blooms are now the primary part of fuel. I suppose that was also the point, if my memory serves accurate, of algae blooms in boundary waters. But what do I remember these days? Less and less. That's our red algae blooms. That's R. That was R. That was R. It was our red. Those scum skimming scabs. Those scum skimming scab thieved us. Dropping, I don't know how one would harvest algae. I guess some net. That'd be my guess. Yeah, I think it makes a little bit of sense. Those scum skimming scabs thieved us before, dipping their catch nets. And boating and motoring. Near ours, taking our algae for their fuel. Let's, like, do I just have this as one, maybe just one big long, what's the conflict? Well, that was, yeah, so, and I needed to do something, and I was going to do something about it. That's, you gotta, this is the action, right? Let's not just tell some opening paragraph, because if not, I guess that's one thing that makes doing like the first chapter can be a little easier, is you don't have to necessarily think of a resolution. You have to set up the conflict, you have to set up the motive, you have to set up all the story elements with the first chapter. I prefer that, at least. But you don't have to resolve all those things. Unlike a flash fiction story, that was our red algae blooms in our Gulf of America. Those scum skimming scabs thieved us before. Dipped, dripped. I want dipped. Dipped their catch nets and motored their boats near ours, taking our algae for their fuel. I brought the gun that time. Maybe we should. I'll adjust the title of this. This is dystopia. 38. $38 for the what is it, 30-06? 30-06 for the Jones and their Bower motors. 30-06 for their drones and boat motors. One shot takes both out. And I aimed. For the first time. Bill and Becky, I haven't used that name for a bit. We all talked. That day, Bill said, what is Bill going to say? We want that. While Sue just laughed. Well, Becky laughed and nodded. Scumskin and Scab. Scum skimming scabs. A shot. They have something like with the ripples. And so I aimed for the. So I aimed at that boat's motor. For the first time, I aimed at something. We talked about first time I brought my gun. It wasn't until I wanted that. I rest the barrel. A life preserver hanging off the algae boat. What time is it? I might. I will be back in a few minutes. And let's continue on with these words and the stochastic fiction game. And let's remind myself, at least, of what the stochastic fiction outline is for the stochastic story elements. And for the story elements, the setting time is in the future. The setting main location is a boat. Conflict, person versus person. Primary characters, many. Excuse me. Quantity of primary characters, many. Point of view first. Tense, past tense. Genre, dystopian. Format, flash fiction. Okay. Let me reread this. At least the title is, so far, the working title is The Gulf of Algae. And I'm going to read this aloud. It's supposed to be a first-person narrative. I've decided to take the side of the American. It's going to be two workers fighting each other, work groups rather, to be able to collect the algae in the Gulf of America / Gulf of Mexico, depending on what name you want to apply to it. And this, because we're taking the first person and because this person is going to be from America, they're going to use Gulf of America. This is dystopian, so let's just go with it. Algae, of course, is something we don't want blooming inside of our oceans because it's going to take the oxygens away and kill lots of life. But I could foresee during the future that people are going to think it's a positive thing if they could turn it into some sort of fuel to burn and give us energy versus using potential wind, wave, solar, things like that. So let's go ahead and read this aloud and I can load it back into my mind. We got first person narrative. So this is supposed to be a person. So let's try to at least critique it as well. Myself will do it while I'm reading it to see if that's still a thing. That was our red algae. That was our red algae. And that was our. Nah, I mean that already sucks, right? That was our red algae. That was our red algae. Let's just say red algae. I don't want to say red algae blooms. That was our red algae in the Gulf of America. Those scum skimming scabs thieved us before, dipped their catch nets and motored their boats near ours, taking our algae for their fuel. I bought that gun that time. I brought the gun that time. Whoa, yeah. But I brought, let's put a but. You know, you gotta have, if you tell the story like a lot of times, you're gonna, we'll act like they're doing some bar. Maybe this is what they're talking about in the bar, and they've told this story 20 times. Each time it gets better and better, and they seem more like the hero. As of probably back in the day, they were the idiot drunk on the boat doing stupid shit. But hey, not that I get nothing against. I do have something against stupid drunks. That was our red algae in our Gulf of America. Those scum skimming scabs thieved us before, dipped their catch nets and motored their boats near ours, taking our algae for their fuel. But I brought a gun that time, a 38 if I got boat to boat, and a 30-06 for their Jones and boat motors. One shot takes both out. And so I aimed that boat at that boat. So I aimed that boat's motor. I've aimed that boat's motor. I'm going to aim at something. I aimed at that boat's motor for the first time. I aimed at something. Billy and Becky, we all talked for the past month about doing something about the boat, the scabs, the skimmers, the scum skimmers, about the scum skimmers. Oh, I got a name drop where they're from, just so we can make sure the poor people hate each other even more. And it's because of, reasons. Like the rich people in Mexico and the rich people in America want us to fight each other. Those scum skimming scabs from Mexico thieved us before. There we go. There are no international waters in this Gulf of America. Bill nodded. What did I just say? What was there are no international waters. No waters in the Gulf of America. There are no international waters in the Gulf of America. There we are. I knew that. I wanted them to know that. They need to know that. Why? On a life preserver, hanging over the edge of the boat. Okay, so I got tension and I got more racism to make sure it's really dystopian, and points out it. And the racism in here I was invented. I don't, I've been called a scab, of course, is someone who is not unionized or crosses the picket line. I have been called a scab before. But I've never been called a scum skimmer. But I'm also not an algae collector in the future. This is person versus person. What's the boat's reaction going to be? I mean, just to keep working, maybe? Well, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. Like, I pulled the gun out. I got to fire it, right? If you brandish a gun at some point, it's either going to need to be almost fired or stop from being fired, but you got to show it again. Resolve that conflict. I knew that. They needed to know that. So I rested the barrel of the Yacht 6. I've never called the 30-06 an Yacht 6 either. This is something that, maybe if I shot a 30-06 more than a few times, that I'd actually have some sort of thought about, lessening the amount of words to define it, because I've just done it so much that I just call my Yacht 6 now. Fiction. So I rested the barrel of the Yacht 6 on a life preserver. We'll do some pointing. There's more than one life preserver. I don't know. Hang on the edge of the algae boat. Well, it was a boat or ship, maybe. Let's do one ship, one boat. Big. We're going to say it's one of those, like, algae ships. Maybe it's like a well or something like that. And it, instead of having a net, it goes through the body of it, like a mouth, like a well mouth. I don't know if that's probably not analogous, if I think that's the right word. Probably not, but I'll live with it if it's not. Never shot on water before. Boat was big enough, didn't move much. Boat, more of a ship. Didn't move much. So it was pretty steady. Kneeling on the deck and sighting. With a gun rested. And I aim at the crosshairs. At the scum skimmer's boat. We're gonna have drones, maybe. We're gonna take out the boat. Gun blast. Fire blue. Barrel on that slug. Hit one of the motors. Smoke spread. And the big boat. Putter to circle. I don't know. It puttered a circle before it stopped. That's one. Then the drones attacked. Then drones attacked us. We didn't see him. One on the side of the ship. Made a big hole, but not a deep hole. With wings as long as my body. No one got hurt. The fire spread. And our ship stopped. How does this end? I don't even know. I mean, I got 44 minutes left. I got decent. I got conflict. I got scene. I got a flash fiction story. Potentially. Maybe. Where is it going to go? I have no idea. Why does this end? I mean, it's dystopia. If it was life, I'm in the phase of writing that I want everything to end with a little bit of happiness and love. But for this stochastic fiction game, dystopia came up, so we got to keep with dystopia, which kind of sucks. Dystopia sucks. As much fun it is to be the hero in a dystopian war, a dystopian world allows for those heroes to have be contrasted and stark, and triumph over such great adversity, to give ourselves images of heroes when we don't need that much fiction to write about heroes. They exist around us. Anyway, I don't know where that tangent went. I don't know what I was supposed to be meaning from that. Just one of those things spoke, I suppose, to pass the time and try to talk to where this story is going to go. I mean, if violence ends with violence, maybe that's just the dystopian nature of it. Feeding the algae. The Gulf of Algae. I mean, I kind of like the Gulf. I'm trying to now, let's see if I can use this title to help me in, just because I think they're all going to die. This is like a dystopian. And where is this? This person's floating on the raft. It's dystopian. Many characters, person versus person, vote, future, dystopian genre. Kind of unavoidable that this can end with love, especially when this prescribed dystopian in the game itself. So let's just go there. They're going to do what poor people are doing against poor people for, since we've recorded history. Kill each other for rich people. It's how. I mean, you'd have to dry it though, right? These ships, they're either catching it with nets and trolling, I think it's called, or they're opening up the mouth of the ship like the American one and letting the water flow through and capturing the algae as it flows out. The drone's gonna fly. I just let loose. So the 30-06 that I had shot, it was bolt action. If I remember right, I shot it a couple times, and it was a memory of, again, with my father, who owned the 30-06. If I remember, that was bolt action. And I had a 22 that was bolt action, which kind of sucked because everyone else had a semi-auto 22, and semi-auto 22s are a lot more fun to shoot than a bolt action 22. Bolt, put bullet in, jam bullet up, pew, as opposed to pew, pew, pew. Shoot the target once while they're unloading an entire little mini mag in it. Anyway, memories of shooting guns. I just let loose. The 06 was bolt action. I feel like this would be in a bar. My 06 was bolt action. Telling the story of, that's what it'll be. Retelling the story. The Gulf of Algae War. This is what I was talking about. Like I can now set this up in a bar, a retelling of the Algae story, retelling of the story about how the Gulf of Algae War started. All drunk in a bar. Wow. All in a bar drinking beer. Alright, now it is all. Oh boy. Nothing brings out dystopia like a jaded person and a beer in a bar and there's no sports on. Although sports nowadays. I let loose. My out six with bull action, but I had my bullet belt on, and I could pop a bullet. I could load a bullet. About as fast. Let's just drop that A. About as fast. About as fast. Bullet about as fast. About, not about. Bout. Bout. I just let loose. My out six with bolt action, but I had a bullet belt. I loaded bullets about as fast as a semi-auto. I hit their boater, their captain, 2 drones, and then the fuel tank. Things went boom then. After that, Bill said, I think we started something. Face all serious. Jaw pulsing. Like chewing on something. I shot a drone swooping up from the said, I think we did. It felt good. Let's put the while in a bar. I always forget what the case. Articles, I'll do it. In a bar, drinking beer. I got burps too. Oof. Coffee. This morning, reacting a little bit strongly against my body. I feel like this would be the first telling of the story. Maybe the first telling of the story. Yeah. Because he just gets better with time. The first telling of the story while in a bar, while drinking in a bar, while drinking beer in a bar. I mean, I feel like the while drinking beer in a bar. Yeah, I gotta move that. While telling of the story. Let's move it. While drinking beer in a bar. How the Gulf of Algae War started while drinking beer in a bar. In a Texas bar? I mean, that's where they launched their stuff from, so that's from a Florida bar. I'll just say in a bar. I don't want to get too specific. While drinking beer, it's like while drunk in a bar. The first telling of the story, how the Gulf of Algae War started while drunk in a bar. Maybe it should be, yeah. I don't know. This is short. Like either my ability or my belief. I have to revisit some of these stories, but they don't seem that. I mean, I guess it's flash fiction. Welcome to flash fiction. And I'm tired of dystopia. And even though I do it daily, write it, that is. I'm trying to write away from it. And I am successfully. I've got some stuff that will be a little bit more lighter in life. A little bit more fun. A little more fun, maybe. Maybe more smiles. Everybody needs to smile more. And smile for other people's happiness, not their own happiness. Whether that happiness comes from something sadistic or something pure of heart. But I think smiling for other people's happiness needs to happen more. It's good. Other people see people happy. For the right reasons too, not for the hateful ones. Because there are people that are really sadistic and get all joy from harming other people. Emotionally. Physically. Anyway. That's not of this story. But I guess it is. It is the dystopian of the story that I want to avoid in life. More and more. But I can't be ignorant about what's going on around us at the same time. For today's stochastic fiction game story with these story elements. The story elements are setting time, future. Let me get some water. I'm talking a lot, drinking coffee, and that doesn't really do well for my voice over time. Everyone needs to drink more water as well, myself included. And not just through cups of coffee. Although, there ain't nothing wrong with cups of coffee until you get a little acid reflux and old, that is. But even then, different story, not this story. This story, for these story elements, we have, for today's stochastic fiction game story elements, setting time, future, setting main, location, boat, conflict, person versus person, quantity of primary characters, many, Point of view first. Tense past tense. Genre dystopian. Format flash fiction. For today's story, it is titled The First Telling of the Story How the Gulf of Algae War Started While Drunk in a Bar. I don't know if I like that title. It should be like While Drunk in a Bar. Let's just say, I'm just going to leave it. Yeah. Like it feels like the war started in the bar the way that that's written, but maybe that's good. It don't matter. It really doesn't. Let's just read this again. The title is called The First Telling of the Story How the Gulf of Algae War Started While Drunk in a Bar. The first telling of the story how the Gulf of Algae War started while drunk in a bar. That was our red algae in our Gulf of America. Those scum-skimming scabs from Mexico thieved us before. Dipped their catch nets and motored their boat near ours, taking our algae for their fuel. But I brought a gun that time. 38 if the boat got close, 30-06 for their drones and boat motors. One shot takes out both. And so I aimed at that boat's motor for the first time. I aimed at something. Bill and Becky, we all talked for the past months about doing something about the skimmers. First time I brought my guns on board, Bill nodded and Becky nodded and laughed. It wasn't until weeks later that I decided to take a rifle out. Bill said, "Don't know if we want that," while Becky laughed and nodded, "Scum skimming scabs from Mexico." Billy nodded. Those international waters are in the Gulf of America. I knew that. They needed to know that. So I rested the barrel of the 30-06 on a life preserver, hanging on the edge of the algae ship. Never shot on water before, but boat or ship did not move much. So it was pretty steady, kneeling on the deck with the gun rested, and I peering through the crosshairs at that scum-skimmering boat. The gun blasted, fire blew from the barrel, and the slug hit the motor. Smoke spread, and the big boat puttered circle before it stopped. That's one. Then a drone swooped in. We didn't see him so close to the water, and one slammed the side of the ship and made a big hole, but not deep enough. Another dropped with its wings along my body, blasted through the command deck. No one got hurt, but fire spread and our ship stopped. I just let loose. My .06 was bolt action, but I had bullet belt. I loaded bullets about as fast as semi-idle could load. I hit their motor, their captain, 2 drones, and then the fuel tank. They went boom, and then after that, Bill said, jaw pulsing like chewing on something, "I think we started something." I shot a drone swooping up from the ocean and said, "I think we did." It felt good, doing something against the Mexican scum-skimming skimmers. I shot a drone swooping up the ocean and said, "Oh." Becky just laughed. I read that wrong. That's dark. It's really dark. I don't want to read it again. But that's dystopia. I think I hit at least all the marks of dystopia. Poor people fighting each other, racism, hate, violence, using weapons to talk, and feeling that's the only option. I think I've hit the mark on that. Well, there's no sense no sense to linger my mind inside a dystopia much longer. And because these stochastic fiction games are as much about the story created to see where I am at in my mind, it is also about the data collection. So let's go ahead and add this story to my repository of writing with the stochastic outline. I can write a good dystopian story. I'm going to rate that a 3 of 4. Maybe some editing, rewrite will make it smell better. But it is done. And I will save this transcript that I spoke during it, and I will process on to something that's hopefully, and we're all deciders of this and creators of it, to a utopia. And at least one where we can talk with our words and not our guns.